the Mindset Athlete Podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. I'm a two-time Paralympian and owner of James Robert Fitness, which is an online training, nutrition, and mindset coaching business. And each week on the Mindset Athlete, we like to bring you inspirational athletes, a message, or experts talking about human optimization to teach you how to change your perception of your mindset and become 1% better. And on today's show, I've got Elena Beth Reynolds. She's a personal trainer now turned mindset coach. So welcome onto the show, Elena.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. So before we get started with today's episode, can you give something to the listeners that they might not particularly know about you, or a little gem that you've never told anybody else about yourself?
Oh, see, I'm quite an open person, so I don't have something I've never told to anybody else. But it's a lot of people. My background is in performing arts. That's what I studied at college, and that's what I went on to do my degree in later on. So that was actually the route I was kind of always initially wanting to take. And recently, well, in the past few years, turned to PTing. But I don't know if there's anything that people don't know about me. I have 2 children. Some people actually don't forget that. But I would say I'm pretty much an open book. Everything is quite out there.
That's fair enough. And if we harpen back to the very beginning and going back to your earlier days within performing arts, how much of an impact has that had on your later life going into personal training and then now obviously going into mindset coaching?
So I never ever took the professional route within performing arts and acting. It's something I'd always wanted to do. But what that gave me when I was younger, it was my everything. It literally was my fire. It was everything I had within me and the things that got me really excited. But what I learned from that is it raised my confidence massively. So it got me comfortable with speaking in front of people and building relationships and communicating. So in a sense, that had a huge benefit. But also the dance aspect side of it got me really it had that aspect of fitness within there. But it wasn't until after I finished my degree that I really started getting it, that I got into fitness. It's kind of after uni actually, when I had I had no idea what I was going to do. I had post-uni blues, they call it, and it's actually really bad. It's something that's not spoken out about a lot. You go through 3 years of university and you come out into this, there's no transition. It just ends. So everything I've been doing leading up to the end of my degree, there was nothing after, and I really lost myself. So it wasn't until later on that year, in 2016, so I was a bit of a mature student. I was a mature student. I went a bit later in life after I had my son. It wasn't until later on in 2016 when I started looking into my nutrition. So over that summer, I actually had a breakdown because there'd been a lot of stuff going on in my life in the past 3 years. And towards the end of the year, it was November 2016, I started looking at my nutrition. And I started a plan and I got on it. So I started cutting out certain foods, eliminating certain foods and reintroducing them and see the impact of food on my body. And it blew my mind. And I mean, ever since that moment, I've not yo-yoed in weight ever since. I've been so happy with my relationship with food ever since 2016. But it wasn't until 2017 that I began my fitness journey. So I started so after I lost a lot of my weight, I started having some PT sessions in 2017, and that it just spiraled from there, really.
And you talk about the post-uni blues. Why do you think those occurred for you more specifically? But why do you think they arise in the first place? Because you talk about going from a place of confidence. And in essence, those are two extremes. It's going from a happy place to a place of, well, you could call it sadness, a dark place, however you want to call it. How did you kind of have that shift yourself?
So what I've recently found out with a lot of coaching myself is that acting and performing was my way of masking a lot of things, and it was my way of finding a fulfillment. There was something missing within me, and it was a way for me to feel more confident. It was a way for me to express myself and kind of escape what was going on. I mean, I had lots of stuff going on, most of my life, really. We all have stuff going on most of our life, but literally it had been like one thing after the other. And so I actually decided to go back to uni after I miscarried. So I had my son, and I unfortunately miscarried, and it was because at that point that it was my everything. That's all I wanted. I wanted another baby, I wanted another child. So I had no other purpose at all, like nothing else going for me, and it's all I ever wanted. So unfortunately I miscarried, and it was really, really tough at the time. It really was. But I do believe everything happens for a reason, and you have a choice in situations of whether you let them define you, whether you let them direct, whether you let them control how you feel and dictate how you feel, or you can look at situations with a light of gratitude and knowing that everything is happening, serving a purpose in a sense for you. And that's how I looked at it. And what actually happened from that was it sparked a bit of joy in me. It sparked some excitement, and it sparked that thing to want to go back into performing again. So I was just because performing was something that made me happy. It made me really happy. So I went back to uni and fell pregnant with my daughter in my first term of uni, ironically, and I just carried on through. I had a choice to drop out and postpone a year, but I just carried on through, had her in the summer, raised my kids throughout my second year, and got 2-1 in my degree. But it's a thing of going back to how can I go from being such a happy place to and growing my confidence to having a breakdown over the summer. Well, this is my thing. I went to uni, and it was fulfilling something within me, but it was masking something. And I was just trying to fill an empty space. So when that happens, when we do that, we try and fill an empty space with something, that space will always be there, because when you take it away, you still feel those things. Do you get what I mean? Mm-hmm. So after uni finished, it was so busy. I had so much on. I didn't have time to think about, things that were going on in my life. My main focus was being a mum, getting my degree. And so it just came to a stop after uni. So when that came to a stop, everything I'd been hiding from, everything I'd been masking started coming out. I developed horrendous anxiety, like to the point where I didn't even get out of bed. I have that part of me that feels really guilty, because I was at the time when, I was living with my brother at the time, actually, during this. So I was really lucky to have support around me, but there were some mornings where I was so anxious, I was shaking, I was crying, I was petrified. I couldn't even get out of bed for the kids. And so that was really the lowest points I've been at. Anxiety can be horrendous. I'd never experienced it before, and I had a breakdown, and it was not a pleasant time, but there were many lessons to learn from it, and it actually made me face the things that I'd been masking.
But most people would associate that to not being able to get out of bed would be a case of depression, and not more specifically to anxiety. But from you more specifically, do you disassociate the two to make yourself feel at ease with one over the other? Because there's, to some degree, not that big a stigma towards anxiety as there is towards depression.
Yeah. I had depression before, but I'd never had anxiety with depression to the point where I was having panic attacks, like where I couldn't breathe. Like I'd never had that before. Um, so you could say, I mean, I probably was depressed. I would say yes, I was. I just never experienced anxiety with it before in that sense. It was a very new experience for me. Very challenging one. But I see what you mean. I see what you mean. That, and to be honest, like I feel I had when I was depressed, when I had depression, I had no motivation to do a thing. And it was different this time because I wanted to make changes. I didn't want to feel that way. I didn't want to sit like that. I didn't want to not be able to get out of bed. I actually wanted shit to change in my life and for me to start living a life that I wanted. I didn't have that when I was suffering with depression. So that's the only difference that I can see in that.
So from that, Eleanor, what do you think some of the biggest lessons are that you learned from that experience within your life?
Deal with your shit, literally. Deal with it. No matter, it's checking in with yourself every single day, processing emotions and processing your feelings. Allowing yourself, if you feel angry, allowing yourself to feel that anger, allowing yourself to feel upset, allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling in that present moment, not suppressing it. But it's also a case of not staying there. I suppressed so much for years and years and years. Since I probably was about 8 years old, I had a hell of a lot of stuff that I'd been suppressing, a lot of stuff that I'd hidden, that I kept to myself, that I was dealing with all that time. There was just, the biggest lesson was to just check in with yourself every day, deal with your shit, face it, because if you do not, it will literally come back and bite you on the arse with massive ginormous teeth like it did. I was not expecting that after getting my 2-1 at uni and feeling extremely proud and extremely proud and happy of myself, that a couple of months later I would have had a breakdown. I didn't process anything. I suppressed it all. I hid it and I masked it with other things. I distracted myself from what was going on. And since then, it's so important to check in with yourself every single day, showing yourself self-love, giving yourself self-love. Like, you are not going to find any fulfillment from anybody else in life. You have to find it within yourself. You're not going to find approval from anybody else in life. You have to find that within yourself. So what came from this was that big surge of awareness to love myself more.
But the analogy most people can probably get from this, and I'll use it, is you talk about not dealing with your shit. It's like kicking. How would I put this? You're trying to hide things away, so kicking stuff under the rug. Excuse me. And in terms of once that builds up like you were talking about, it's going to come to a point where you're going to trip over that and obviously break your neck. So people get the metaphor. You've got to not do something like that because it becomes a hazard. So if we can put it in the light of day and it's not in the subconscious, which I think people are easy to deal with, or if I hide it away, can't see it, that's no big deal. Whereas if we put it into the sense of reality, well, you're not going to do that because it's going to come a certain point where it's an obstruction, it's a bit of an eyesore, and obviously we are creatures of habit. We're going to have this sense of what's other people going to think of a room looking like that, and you're going to deal with it and do something about it. But obviously when it does come to emotions, the mindset, and how we feel to ourselves, we do mask away and kind of don't really deal with it. Put it to one side, and I'll come to that when I get round to it, and I'll try and deal with what makes me feel happy, or what's gonna give me a sense of get up and go. On this bad stuff, nah, I don't want to deal with that. Let's put it to one side and carry on.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. It's something so many of us do. Literally, the amount of stuff that was under my rug, it felt like I'd been walking so big, I was walking up my rug, and it is literally, I got to the top of it, and then I kind of fell down. Like, it wasn't so much of as a trip, it was literally a fall. But I think it's funny because it's such a common thing. Self-love has had a stigma around it of being selfish, and something that's not okay to do. You know, we're taught to, you know, think of other people first. But it's that analogy, you know, that classic analogy, you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't pour from an empty cup. You have to fill your cup up first. And if you are pouring from your cup that's half full, what is left for you? How are you going to tell other people? How are you going to be able to show up as the best version of yourself, give everything that you can give, be the best version of you if you have nothing to drink from yourself? So I am a biggest advocate for self-love. And I think that with the thing of dealing with your shit, it can be shunned off a lot. It can be like people can shy away from it. They can be like, oh, well, that don't bother me. I'm not fussed by that. That's not true strength. That's not true inner power. I don't believe that. I believe true strength and inner power comes from saying, right, this is a situation at hand. Yes, it's shit, but I have a choice. I can let this define me and dictate my feelings, or I can choose to process this and choose how I'm going to feel about this. So true power comes from saying, yes, this has happened, but I'm not going to let this dictate how I feel. I choose how I feel, not, oh, that's not bothering me. I'm not fussed by that. Do you see the difference? If that makes sense. Yeah.
And I'm going to try and not get too sciencey here and too technical, because at times it can be too difficult for people to contemplate. But in terms of like of a hormonal response, and for you more specifically, because you found times where you were, in a sense, inept, not able to get out of bed. Do you think that was because of not dealing with your shit, as you mentioned, what was under your rug, had an impact on, be it every chemical process within your body?
100%. Yes, I absolutely believe that. I believe it was kind of like a domino effect. You know, when you don't care about yourself. So obviously when you're feeling stress, your body releases cortisol. Like, that's one of the, you know, main hormones that's released, and there's so many others. But when we're in that state, our body puts itself in that position of fight or flight mode, like, all the time. So our brainwaves are like going at such a high frequency that we're constantly like in alert phase. That's how it is. So it's no wonder people feel like so anxious when they've got so much going on. But I believe that from the not caring about myself, from literally hiding everything and just masking everything over, I wasn't showing myself any self-love. I wasn't showing myself self-care. If I didn't love myself, why on earth would I then feed myself the right things? Why on earth would I, you know, and feed myself right things with food and body, but also my mind? And why would I like be interested in fitness and things as well? This is where it all kind of links, because they're all the biggest mind, body and soul thing, isn't it? They're all interlinked. So just by that alone, that caused a big spiral effect down, because your hormones are impacted massively by what you eat as well, and exercise. So if I'm not, you know, if I wasn't eating right, then I wasn't, you know, that was affecting the hormones that were produced as well. So I believe it 100% did affect every single area in my life.
But you all get this I can't say the word, relatability two hormones, and I'll quote this from a TV program I was watching yesterday, which is quite ironic in terms of I would question some of it because it would be doing a little bit beyond the research of what it was, thinking, well, if you want to have it that effect on yourself, how is it going to have the alter effect? And I'll go into actually my point of this is it was looking at, I think it was a TV program, Ransom, playing on the fact that, oh God, what was that thing going viral? It was scaring the kids months ago. I think it was building on something to do with that into their storyline.
But Momo.
Yeah, but theirs was to do with doing 16 stages to, or in the end, kill themselves and do towards suicide. But obviously that was, they were in a bad place that you talk about in terms of there's no self-love, there's no self-worth, and they all, I think people in general, in a nutshell, a craving is to be loved by somebody, no matter what. So they're going towards that, and the acronym they were using within it was DOSE. So it's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphin. So obviously, dopamine, as you and I know, is anything that's going to stimulate you. So be it you get a high from it. So the easiest one for us is exercise, but it's anything that you get a kick out of. So and then the other one, adrenaline and endorphins. It's probably like a risk and a reward. So if you do something stupid, you weigh it up as, it's another TV I was watching Coach Trip, like celebrity version. One of them didn't want to do it, but once he jumped on and what was he doing, a zip wire, he wanted to do it again. So we talk about the endorphins from doing the risk and rewards. If you get a kick out of it, you want to do it again. But the serotonin and the oxytocin, I was like, well, it's trying to conduce the people to go sleep deprived. Well, from my basis of knowledge of the two hormones, well, if you're not sleeping, your serotonin level is definitely not going to be a factor. It'll be going down. So in terms of making you feel a sense of good, I would disagree with the TV drama, but then no TV drama is 100% accurate in terms of if you actually delve deep enough and reflected on, well, that's total bullshit because that's not possible. So from that basis, and then oxytocin was on the basis of, well, the sense of it is a love hormone. So you are craving either something that you are not being given by your peer, or you perceive you're not being given by your family, whereas that would be impossible. Whereas it's probably self-love that you need to give to yourself. So in a nutshell, those are four hormones are going to have a massive impact on your well-being, your state of mind.
Yeah. They're really important. They all have a huge impact on your body. Serotonin is probably one of the most interesting ones. I mean, it's a lot of people think it's formed within the brain, but the higher percentage of your serotonin is formed in your gut. It's actually formed within your gut, and that I feel that one, it gets, when I tell people, educate people about that a lot, they're like, what? No way. It's like, yeah. So literally what you eat forms, within your gut forms these happy hormones. So when people eat like shit, they're going to feel like shit, literally. And the brain and the gut is joined. It's linked by its nervous system, the essential nervous system. It's actually linked. Like, they talk, they respond to each other. I feel hormones are something that gets neglected a lot, especially within the PT profession. I mean, I've spoke to PTs before that think it's all about calories and macros. with your body and how it functions. And it's not hormones play like it's an aspect of it, but it's hormones that play the biggest part.
Do you think there's a gender divide between PTs on that, or not really?
A gender divide?
As in hormones, because obviously males don't have to deal, I won't say they don't have to deal with their hormones, but they're not as influential day to day as, say, for a female.
I don't know if I'd say there's a divide, but I would say that a lot of the PTs that I did speak to were males that didn't take into consideration hormones. So I'm not saying that's all males. I'd just say that's just what it is. But I think, females, we're labelled. We're known for being hormonal and having extra hormones and stuff, and a lot of hormones. But at the same time, that guys have the same. But because of this stigma and this thing of around hormones, it's just been given a more of a feminine like link to it, I suppose. But I think there is a lot more of education that can be given within hormones alone, especially within the PT industry. It's something that's needed. I think cut off the education about calorie counting and just up the education on hormones and the functioning of the body.
Well, it'll be ever changing because there's been a shift between. Gosh, we're going into nutrition a bit, but in terms of what was commonplace 20 plus years ago with the Eat Well plate to that is now, I won't say disregarded, but within the profession, it's not the go-to. It was once. Calorie counting is probably the norm right now in terms of everybody's fixated on it must hit my calories, but that you're kind of putting a stopgap on your results and actually enjoying the process, because that's very analytical in terms of looking at things from that perspective. And you mentioned a good point in terms of the macros. Well, for some people that's too difficult, and it does come down to probably listening to the individual and say, well, what do you think is feasible for you going forward, for you to be accountable and for you to get the best out yourself? So I think, and as PTs, we do go in with I will call it a fixed mindset, as I want you to do this, otherwise I don't feel that I'm doing enough work. So as opposed to doing what I just mentioned and listening to, be it the client, the person you're consulting with, and they having an onus on their results. And obviously they're going to be more willing to want to improve on that because they're invested themselves. It's not, here is all my problems. In this case, we're not sweeping it on the rug. We're kind of putting it at the feet of another individual. Here you go. You deal with my problems. Kind of mentality. And we need to kind of probably, with better education, come away from that. And like you were saying, hormones are a massive factor in that. And I think it does come down to not re-educating, but bringing them along for the ride, in a loose term, in terms of, well, this is how I did it, and explaining and putting into place strategies as you have got A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however we want to number it, how we want to portray it. This is the circumstance I had to deal with. These are the steps I put in place. You take it as you will. And we go from there. Be it you can either do it yourself, work with a mentor or a coach to get you in a better place. And I think it's doing, as you mentioned, and then probably trying to as opposed to alleviate the problem and probably help them get out of what is a rut in a sense, need to be a bit more proactive and actually get the individuals to see that there's a problem before it actually materializes.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah. And I think the most important thing is the mindset. It's all about mindset. And I think that if I said like you should have like more education in hormones, but you know what? If anything, it's the mindset that should be pushed forward when it comes to be honest, any area in life, any area, not just personal training, not just fitness, not just within nutrition, any area in life. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but it's something. Hence why I've tried. You know, I'm now a mindset coach because it's that aspect that made me so passionate. Realised I wanted no amount of coaching in the gym, no amount of advice or calorie counting for some of my clients. They still were not fulfilled. No, even with their results, even when getting results, still not fulfilled. And their limiting beliefs still kept coming up. They still kept, talking bad about themselves, not ever being satisfied, not feeling happy in their own skin. And it's all, that aspect is all down to the mindset, which is why I'm so passionate now. Why I made that big transition into mindset coaching.
Well, I think you ask a poignant question, Elena, in terms of how do I envision it, and this is probably how I've had the shift within my business. I'll look to, well, not necessarily solve that first, but at least bring up, well, some of those inner demons, and get them to be at least realize that they're there, and we work through that, and then obviously look to see what the priority is, and you make the decision. Be it, do we need to focus on the mindset first? Do we need to focus on the fitness first? Do we need to focus on the nutrition? And you make the decision as opposed to saying, I think it's this. We work in that order, working what was the stereotypical way of, okay, the only two at that time. And it's only more recently that it's had a shift towards what is psychology, and obviously mindset and how the brain functions in controlling all of it. We only looked at what was, in a sense, behavior and aesthetics, whereas I think people are still, to a certain extent, still fixated on that. I must look a certain way because this is how I feel about myself. This is what society is telling me I need to look like. This is what magazine, this is what, so you're kind of brainwashing yourself to believe stuff where I think when you were in the right state of mind, you would say, hang on a second, I don't believe in that BS at all. This is how I think. But because you've got so engrossed into what is popular culture, you start functioning as this is your new norm. Whereas if we take a step back, like you said, in terms of, and this is where I'm going to make my point, we don't envision the brain as another actual muscle. I think because probably as education is not for everybody, people kind of switch off from it and well, English, math, science, this isn't for me. I'm going to switch off and I'm going to focus on be something that makes me happy, gives me positive hormonal responses, so be it social media, reality television, stuff that's, in a nutshell,
At least there's a dopamine.
Well, it brings out the worst in probably people as well, because you get a kick out of things when something goes wrong with somebody. You get a sense of, I wouldn't say happiness towards it, but because there's excitement, there's something that gives you that hormonal response that you crave. Whereas if you actually took a step back and actually look to probably improve yourself, and how you wanted to better yourself. It's hard to put into words in terms of what I mean by this, but you want to strive to be better, be it having that connection with your brain. And I think this is where people probably get unstuck, because we necessarily think of the brain as separate from the rest of the body in a sense, because I can see my muscles grow because I've got the not my trainers will talk about the mind muscle connection, in terms of we have no problem with getting that rapport, but then you don't think of the brain can be improved upon. Whereas obviously if you took a step back, and I think, what's the quote in terms of, I think it's something very, very minute percentages of the brain we actually utilize. And I think something like 15%. So you're thinking, well, there's going to be there's nobody out there who've attained 100% capability of their brain, probably very, very close. But you look at how much we don't utilize that is being potentiated to be able to utilize. And I use big words there, but in terms of that actual frame of mind, if you look at it from that perspective, well, look how much you can improve. We use a very limited resource. Why that is, that's a different question altogether.
Yeah. It's the thing, though. I mean, a lot of people don't even know they have the potential to use more of their brain. But why would they? Their awareness isn't there. Their attention's not pointed at that. Their awareness is on their, on the forefront of their mind of what they're currently thinking and feeling. And if they're feeling about themselves that they don't feel good enough, they don't have the potential, or that nothing they ever do is good enough, all these limiting beliefs we tell ourselves, why would they think that they could potentially use more of their brain? Why would they be open to that idea? We focus on, we get back what we focus on. And this is a thing with beliefs. When you believe something within yourself, you will do anything to prove yourself right and back up those beliefs. So you will look for any reason to back up the beliefs that you're not good enough, that you can't amount to anything, that you're fat, for example. That's the biggest one. A lot of people saying, I'm fat. You're not fat. Fat is not an identity. You have fat. That's something that can change. So until people have that awareness, and their mind can be opened, or they open their mind, and that can only happen when they want to change and make changes, when they have something, an insightful question asked to them that makes them think beyond their current beliefs, makes them think beyond their current thoughts, will change ever occur. And that is why I'm so passionate about mindset coaching. That is why I'm a mindset coach, because it's that bridge gap between your current state of thinking to where you want to be in life, to achieve what you want to achieve. And if we can bring that into the fitness industry of challenging their forefront of beliefs, then their results in the gym, what do you think? Their results in the gym are going to get worse? Their results in the gym are going to get better because they have a connection with why they want those results. So somebody comes to you and says, I want to lose 10 pounds. Okay. Why do you want to lose 10 pounds? Because I don't want to be fat anymore. I want to lose the fat. But if you dig deep and ask them insightful questions, and you work on their mindset, you probably get to the root that they want to lose 10 pounds because they're sick and tired of sabotaging themselves because they don't believe they're good enough. Or they want to lose 10 pounds because they actually want to amount to something. They want satisfaction. They want achievement. So when you can make those connections, that is just, it's going to put like a little turbo boost on your reason for exercise, or your reason for starting a health and fitness journey, for example.
But then, like you were saying, early doors, in terms of, the fulfillment that you had, what actually brings you the most fulfillment now? Because obviously you talked about in the early part of the episode that you were having a stopgap, be it having children, going to university. What is the fulfillment that, I'm going to say, completes you and kind of brings you a greater sense of joy now?
I have the biggest smile on my face right now. So, as I said before, acting and performing was my everything. When I was younger, I had one thing about me is I have very strong, very strong visions. I believe anything is possible. Like, ever since I was a little girl, there was telling me no, that I could not achieve anything. And that's something I lost when I got older, but that's another story. But so acting, I'd always envision myself being on that red carpet, being famous, being known, making something huge of my life, being that girl that's come from a tiny island that takes on and conquers the world, okay? That was my everything. It gave me joy, excitement. It made me feel good. I felt it was the one thing that I was here to do. Recently, and I mean recently, within the past 8 weeks, that whole perception that I have, and this is just how strong beliefs can be, right? That whole perception I had on that, everything I wanted to strive for, has changed. My mindset coaching has given me full fulfillment. I have never, ever felt this way about anything before. I didn't think anything would come close to the way acting and performing makes me feel. And I've recently just done a performance. I was a lead in a show recently. And it literally, just 3 months ago, I was saying I'm going to take the professional route and give it a go. Mindset coaching, doing this, has given me a greater joy, a greater fulfillment, and just a sense of being on purpose. And it is that saying, I keep saying it all the time at the moment, I'm in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. I have found that thing, and I cannot express the feeling of contentment and happiness that I feel, because this is not masking anything. This is actually me being true to who I am. And the fact that I don't know if I want it. I don't want to take the professional route in acting and performing. Now, I cannot express how big a deal that is. Anybody that knows me will understand how big a deal that is. This is what brings me just complete contentment within myself and fulfillment and drive. And I wake up every day with a smile. I go to bed with a smile. I actually don't want to go to bed because I'm so excited about life. I go to bed literally oh, I can't wait to wake up. I've never felt that way before, ever. And I didn't think it was possible to feel that way. For years and years, I've been, getting myself down, picking at myself, getting angry and frustrated at myself for not being motivated, for not being able to stay consistent, for not being competent, for not showing up and not achieving my goals. And the truth is, I just didn't want to do what I was doing. I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. And I think a lot of us can find ourselves in those situations. It's when you find that thing that you want to do, that thing that you feel like it just fulfills you, just feels right, then you feel full contentment. I never ever thought I'd feel this way. And I kind of had to pinch myself a bit, because I was like, 2 weeks down the line, I was like, hang on, am I feeling this way? And I was like, this can't be right. I was like, this will go soon, because this is what usually happens. I'll get excited about things and then it will just disappear. That excitement will go. It hasn't. It's just got stronger and stronger. It's absolutely crazy. I cannot explain it. But I'm doing the right thing right now. I'm just where I'm meant to be. So yes, to answer your question, mindset coaching, that is the answer.
And you kind of gloss over the fact that going from childhood into probably teenage life, I would assume and presume, probably right. Why do you think that, and I'm going to generalize this comment a little bit more and make it a little bit more for everybody, that we kind of go from a sense of a risk and reward, and to a certain extent, as in our younger years, there's no risk really. You don't actually, take on board the consequences. You do it anyway. But why do you think there is that shift at a later life to be able to, not to be able to, that you take on board the risks, the consequences, and obviously sometimes that's going to dictate and you're not going to do the task at hand?
Interesting question. Are you referring to before mindset coaching as an example?
I would say before, because everybody's going to go through that scenario where, as a child, I'm not going to say everybody's risk averse, but in terms of you're more likely to do things that are maybe adverse to the consequences. You don't really think about it. You do it. Maybe in hindsight I shouldn't have done that, but that may be the worst case scenario, that the actual thought processes arise. But in most cases, you don't think of the what if. I want to do that to fit in. I'm going to do it. But when does you think that the mental shift occur where people get, I'm not going to say fixated, but in worst case scenarios, they get fixated on, well, this could go wrong. People are going to think this of me, etc. And then obviously you kind of take a back seat and become a hermit in the sense of the word. You become recluse in the worst scenario.
Okay. I don't know how that is for everyone. I couldn't pinpoint a certain point in life that says this happens because of this or this happens when. I think it's just a series of experiences, because there are people out there that don't ever experience any of that stuff. You know, they've literally never had any limiting beliefs about themselves. They've never doubted themselves. Okay. The one thing I can relate that to is my personal experience. But a lot of mine just came from my lack of self-worth, not feeling good enough. And, you know, there was a point where I actually went from so much fire and ambition, and I say fire a lot. It's a fire, like fire in your belly. And there was a point I had so much, and I just lost it in an instant, because I made a decision. It was down to a decision I made. So when I found out I was pregnant with my son, I was training at Performance Preparation Academies, ready to kind of go audition and go off to drama schools and things. That's the route I wanted to take. When I found out I was pregnant with my son, I made an instant decision to give up on that. I remember saying the words to myself, well, that's my acting career over, before it even started. Now, there's two things I knew in life that for sure. I was going to be a mum, and that I was going to do something big in this world, right? I knew I was going to. Those were two like non-negotiable things. But what happened was, when I gave up on that straight away, I literally put my fire out in my belly, and it was a decision I made. And then I spiraled down, and I literally became a hermit. That was when I became depressed. I didn't leave the house. I didn't have a phone. I didn't speak to anyone. I just stayed inside in four walls all the time. And it's because I made a decision to stop being true to who I was. Now, becoming a mum was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, they're my little saviours. I wouldn't change anything for the world, and this was my path. This is where I was meant to go. And I have so much gratitude for it, because for going through this experience myself, this is what's given me that passion and drive to help other people relight their fire in their bellies, you know, to help the people that feel lost, those ambitious people who want more out of life. You know, it's given me that drive. I'm here to help those people, to tell them, you can do that. You can, like, relight that fire within you. You can still achieve these things that you want to achieve. But I would just say, going back to the question, that I think it's just down to mounting experiences in your life, and down to your root beliefs about yourself. everything comes down to a decision and choice. And when you raise that awareness within yourself that you hold the power to your choices and your decision in your life, then you can choose how you respond. We all, I used to hate being told take responsibility. I always took that as taking blame for things. I hated it. But until I read a book and it said responsibility is your ability to respond, it blew my mind. Changed everything. I was like, my gosh, it's not about me. It's not about, it's not about things being put on me. It's about my ability to respond to any situation experience in my life. So yeah, I think it's just down to the decisions that we make. We all have a choice as to whether we say, you know what, I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna keep going. Or that choice of I'm gonna give up now. You can't ever be, there's two choices that they're either empowering or disempowering, positive or negative. You can't be in the limbo between the two. It's one or the other. And when we realize that when you make that decision, it will go one way or the other.
So let me ask you this question then, because I've obviously got to know you. Why does that belief come into you, and it may have changed since this occurred, that everything needs to be perfect before you'll get something done? And obviously people can relate to that.
Say that again.
In terms of how, since I've got to know you, and this belief may have changed since you brought it up. When a certain circumstance comes of it needs to be perfect before it gets done, analogy, and people can resonate with that. Have you had a shift in the perception towards that? Or have you kind of taken a step back? It doesn't need to necessarily be perfect. And I'll go a step further in terms of why I say this, because people have that assumption it needs to be a certain way to be appreciated. It probably comes back to what you talked about self-worth. It's you are you're pinning your hopes on and dreams on what other people are going to think about it before you actually do anything with it. You have that assumption, well, they're not going to like me, they're not going to like this, and then you take a step back because you kind of put yourself on the back foot, and you're not actually doing anything. You're kind of giving yourself putting a barrier straight away because you have that predisposed idea in your head.
Yeah. So my perspective has completely changed on that. It was something that recently came to my attention that I've been holding off doing a lot of things because I wanted it to be perfect. So I wouldn't put myself out there out of fear of rejection, fear of being good enough, fear of people thinking I'm stupid. But this is a wonderful thing. When these realizations come to the forefront of your mind, you can challenge them and you can understand them, and then you can change them. So I don't have that perception now. Literally ever since that conversation that I had with you about that, I have been doing nothing but just putting myself out there imperfectly, taking imperfect action, because there's no action that is perfect. There's not. This is something I learned very recently. And it's just about just being true to yourself. And all the time that I was trying to be perfect, all the time that I was trying to do things in a certain way, trying to please everybody else, I was taking myself further and further away from my authentic truth. So today was a prime example, doing this podcast, because I've never done a podcast before, never. I was so nervous, and I was like, what have I started, the chimp inside started talking. It's like, what have I got to offer? What have I got to say that, people can listen to and stuff? But I just took it away from that and thought, you know what? I'm just going to just take that imperfect action, just do it. Just do it. And what will be, will be. You can't live up to the expectations of other people. And I'm very slowly learning getting there to accept and appreciate myself for who I am and not care so much about being perfect. As long as I am happy in me, happy with what I'm doing and true to myself and doing what I want to do with value and helping other people, then that's all there is to it. So I no longer have that perception. It's a perception that changed. This is another thing. People think there's a stigma around change taking a long time. Change will occur as quickly as you allow change to happen. You know, that I could have literally stewed on that belief for months and months and months, even years. I have done with previous beliefs. You know, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. Literally, it's all I say to myself all the time. I knew why, and I know why I feel that way. But I could have stewed on that for a long time, but I didn't. I chose. I made that decision. I was talking about earlier. Made that decision to change that perception. And that, I think it's a wonderful thing. I love the fact that in each and every single one of us, we have the power to choose what we do, how we feel, how we think, how we react, how we respond, how we behave. We have that power. Nobody else has it in them to control us. You control you. And I find it it's just a breath of fresh air. And I actually find it liberating. Like it's wonderful. And when you realize that, and when you tell yourself and you say to yourself that I have that power within me, you know, I tell you what, it does wonders for your confidence as well. You know, you really want to start putting yourself out there.
Well, this is one, and I've thought about it before I'm going to say it. People will have heard practice makes perfect, but it depends on which side of the coin you look at it. On reflection, I'm thinking it through my head. When we put the notion of, obviously, practice is no problem because that's where you make mistakes, you learn from it. But then this notion of perfection is quite dangerous because, like, well, if I look at it from one perspective, it's not attainable. There's a limiting belief stopping me because, well, practice makes perfect. Well, if I'm going to keep doing the same thing over and over again and it's not right, I move myself further and further away from what is perfection. So I think from that analogy, you take it from what you will, take the good and the bad. I think in overall reflection, it is a basis of obviously trial and error, and look at it from that perspective too. You get better the more you do something. You get good at it, as opposed to trying, should I say, to attain perfection, because it's not attainable, because it's an ever moving pendulum, however we want to say it, because it's always going to move. But that, if you look at it from a positive perspective now, as opposed to me saying the negative way of looking at it, you're okay with getting close to it. That's practice. And you keep moving the barrier further and further away from yourself to keep growing. So I think in a nutshell, like you say, it comes down to perception. It comes down to how you envision yourself moving forward.
I think also it's in which scenario you think of this as well. So, you know, what is perfect? What defines perfect? It's not a measurable outcome. Perfect. It's a result. And I think the result that drives perfection is satisfaction. So if you're somebody that works hard, I mean, you can have, if you look at, for example, you know, weightlifting, you know, you could have the most perfect squat form. You could be squatting weights, you know, you could be squatting at professional level. But if you don't think you're good enough, right, are you going to put yourself forward to squat at professional level? Are you going to feel perfect in yourself and to yourself? Are you going to feel satisfied? Of course you're not. Perfection is a desired outcome, and that desired outcome is a choice made by you. You know, it's about accepting and appreciating where you are every step of the way, I feel. Like you said, practice makes perfect. In a sense of, for example, if you actually have a competition and there are things that you have to hit, right? So like targets or, numbers that you have to hit, that's slightly different because that's measurable. But if you're looking at everyday life, such as putting yourself on a podcast, how do you measure that? How do you measure perfection on a podcast? You can't. You actually can't. So I suppose that practice makes perfect is in a sense of, works in a sense of in the fitness field or in a competition scenario, things where there are scalable, measurable, outcomes. But in terms of everyday life and our mindset and our thoughts about ourselves, it's not measurable. Perfect is a desired outcome. It's satisfaction, and you can choose. You can choose that satisfaction. You can be satisfied in yourself for trying and making effort. You can be satisfied with yourself for going out there and not doing it 100% correctly or completely doing it wrong. But you can still feel satisfied within yourself for trying and your efforts.
Yeah, but you would agree that people don't look at it from that perspective most of the time.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Like I said, perfectionism, it's not a scalable outcome. People constantly reaching for this perfectionism. They're constantly reaching for something that isn't there. It's not there. It doesn't exist. Nothing is perfect. Until you have, and this is why people set goals. Goals help achieve that, that outcome. When you hit your goal, it's like, great, amazing. But acknowledge where you're at. Don't just pass it over and think, oh, still not good enough. I'm not where I'm meant to be. You've made an achievement. You've hit a goal. And then, you raise it a bit and you bring it up and you do that over time and your goals get bigger and bigger and bigger. But if you're just going about every day with a sense of, running around in your subconscious mind of I'm not good enough, then no matter what you do, is never, ever, 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 ever be good enough. So you're literally reaching for the impossible in your mind.
And then this moves.
You never get that satisfaction.
And this moves pointedly to my penultimate question to you, in terms of, and you may have answered it already. How would you get somebody to either change or challenge their inner belief system?
Oh, question. Ask intriguing and insightful questions on, about themselves. It's open up a conversation. Help them dig into those beliefs. As a coach, you're not there to give them advice and tell them what to do. You can give you can give your own stories and personal experiences and stuff, but you're not there to tell them what to do. Change will only ever happen if that person decides that they want to change, if they're open-minded to changing. So it's just about asking questions, having a conversation with them that is going to challenge their current thinking. Because when you challenge your current thinking, you think past your current thinking. Opens your eyes. And this is, we get all this current thinking is what we can get this challenging thinking from books. Books changed my life. Audios, YouTube videos, all these things help challenge our current belief system, our current thought patterns. But going back to what I said before, that I feel I need to mention this, is there's a fear around being too satisfied with where you're at. It's a fairly common thing. People feel that if they feel that feeling of satisfaction, that they're good enough, that they won't ever push past, that they'll get comfy where they are. And it's a really common fear. But it's actually not the case, because do you not find that every time that you reach for a goal, you smash a goal, that you want to go for it again, you want to up it and you want to go for it again? It's actually one of the biggest driving forces. And you know what? You will find that you are content in every single day of your life. If you're not content in yourself today, if you don't love yourself today, if you don't feel good enough today, and you don't do anything about it, what on earth makes you think that in 3 days time, 3 weeks time, 3 months time, 3 years time, 30 years time, that you're going to feel those things with that same thought pattern? And I think I encourage people to feel good in themselves. Find everything that they desire within themselves. Find it within the internal, not the external. And I think it's just when you can challenge people's thoughts and get people to open their mind a bit, you can literally see changes start to happen. No, I don't know what your thoughts are around that, but those are my thoughts. I mean, how do you feel? I mean, you're a professional, professional athlete. What are your views around, satisfaction?
Gosh, that's a good question. Very rarely have I got that flipped around on me, that question. In terms of satisfaction,
Sorry.
it's all right. It'll come down to two factors. It's obviously that inner belief, that inner motivation, first and foremost, or the external motivation that you talked about, the outcome, the result, which in a sense is materialism. And it depends where you are at, be it in your career or journey, where you will find that satisfaction. For me, more specifically, it would have varied throughout that career. Be it the early stages was, well, if we go right back, external. I was very egotistically driven. It was, I could care less about the performance. I just wanted to win. And I think as I progressed up the ranks, that changed because the satisfaction was within. It was, like you said, ticking off goals. I wanted to make the national team. Done that. What's the next one I want to do? And do it from that stage. So it was internal ones driving me to have that sense of satisfaction. But if we take it all in the commonality of the two motivators, it stems from passion. That's the biggest one to and this is what you brought up in terms of where you're at within coaching. It is the driving force behind it. I'd have done it if I was lucky enough to be paid to do it. I'd have done it anyway. So it does come down to that is an inner belief. I'm in a good place. I'm doing it for me, not for anybody else. I'm not trying to fulfill anybody else's lifelong dream, be it, parental pressure, be it being put upon oneself. I didn't have that. This is the goal I wanted to do. It's something I wanted to do from a very young age, to be an athlete. Okay, that did happen when I probably got to my teenage years. The fashion in which I wanted to do that wasn't realistic, but another door opened and I took it. So in a nutshell, to answer your question, Elena, it probably comes down to the perception you see satisfaction. It's going to change, and it comes to a fact. Are you content with that? How you see it? Because sport is very much outcome based, results focused, and to a sense very materialistic because it's awards. What's the other one I want to use? Accolades that come with it. That's the driving factor at some point within that realm. If you can have a little bit of a equilibrium between the two, I think you are more satisfied, because once you start swaying towards obviously that external motivator all the time, you start to lose that motivation. You start to do, like you said, it starts to wane away. It's you lose. Well, that's not really fulfilling me now. It's kind of lost its buzz. It's not really instilling that fire within me to get up every morning to put myself through that. I'm not going to say put my body through it, because people can't, not everybody can relate to that. But in terms of to want to do that, whereas if you can keep it more towards the internal side of things. Okay, I'm not saying it's all sunshine and roses, but there are days when it's hard, and that's when support is necessary to kind of whatever fashion that materializes, a shoulder to cry on, put an arm around you or kick up the ass. They're all support in one way or another. It's just how you look at it. But it's gravitated between one and the other, and it's fluctuating. There's gonna be times there's gonna be ones I want, but if you're content with that, I think you are going to be fulfilled and more satisfied where you're at. And my final question to you, before we wrap up the episode, is if you had to summarize what we've been speaking about today into one sentence for people to take away, what would that be?
Oh, go and love on yourself like you've never loved on anybody before.
And can you extend that out?
Should I put it in the right words? Let's think about this. No thing, nobody, no situation, no experience will ever fulfill you unless you choose and decide what fulfills you. I would say looking to the external for answers will only create more external experiences. All the time you do that, you take yourself further away from yourself. You have to look within you for everything that you want in life. You have to look within you for how you want to feel, be, do, act, behave, be seen. You have to look within you, including your achievements, everything, your satisfaction, no matter what it is, it has to come from you. And that comes from a place of self-love, self-worth. It comes from a place of putting yourself first. I'll say that is the summary what today is about.
So, Elena, once again, thanks for coming on the Mindset Athlete podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, the pleasure's been all mine. If you like this episode, please do share it with your friends and do let Elena and I know what you thought of the episode by tagging us over on Instagram at elenabeth.mompreneur and at James O. Roberts 11. And again, you can do the same on Twitter and Facebook. And once again, do check out my free content at fitamputee.co.uk/free-resources. Make sure to check the link out. The link will be in the description. You can find all the show notes at mindsetgame.lipson.com under the category General. So once again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of the Mindset Athlete podcast.